In this video we are going to be looking over this Minolta X 570 35mm film SLR camera equipped with the MD 50mm f1.7 prime lens. It comes with a cap with a little strap so that it can hang from there if you'd like to keep from losing it, or you could take it off entirely. The strap elastic is no longer elastic, and you may prefer to just take that off of the cap and clean it up, but it's like that for now. And I thought I'd just make a few comments about the X570. It's a lesser known camera to its supposed big brother in the early 80s, the X700, which was very well known, a very popular camera. And in the early 80s, the reason that it was really popular was that it had a program mode on the shutter speed dial that the X570 does not have. And the reason that people wanted that was that people who knew very little about photography could simply set that on P and point, focus, shoot, and get reasonably good pictures. And that was important in the early 1980s when lots of people were shooting film SLRs. As we move forward to the year 2020, you're very unlikely to want a program mode like that now, because if you're interested in still shooting film, you most likely have a pretty good understanding of how aperture and shutter speed can be manipulated for creative effect, and you want to have better control of your camera to take your pictures. So the X570 lacks that program mode, but it has a feature that is actually worth more than that for manual photography, and that is that there's a blinking light that shows along the side in the viewfinder that tells you exactly what this shutter speed dial is set at. And you can also see the aperture through a little viewpoint right down there. So while looking through the viewfinder, you can compose your picture and do all your settings without ever having to take your eye away from here to check what your dial is set at. And that's a very useful feature that the X570 has that the X700 did not have. And it makes a very nice camera for manual photography. So I thought, for testing purposes, I've got a couple of batteries in here. They are not included in the sale, but I put them in and checked this out. I did do some testing, also setting at different ISO values that you can set here. They called it ASA back in these days, but there's 100, 200, 400, all the way up to 3200, all the way down to 12. We'll set it at 200. I set different ASA values and different shutter speeds and apertures and metered to get the ideal setting on this camera, and then I checked it with the same ISO value on a modern DSLR, also equipped with a 50mm lens, pointed at exactly the same subject, and at several different configurations they were all in very close agreement. So I would say the metering is working well in this camera. So okay, we already got it on, and let's start stepping down through the shutter speeds just so we can see here. 1/1000th, 1/500th, 1/250th, 1/125th, 1/60th, 1/30th, 1/15th, 1/8th, 1/4th, 1/2, 1 full second, and the bulb setting. And it stays as long as I hold that down. Okay. This camera also features an aperture priority setting, and there's also a little audible setting here too, so that as I point this camera into, say, bright light, it picks a shutter speed. And now it is saying that there's not enough light when I do that, and we hear the audible beep. But as soon as I take my hand away, it takes a picture with the high shutter speed. If I'm blocking off the light, the shutter speed is so slow that you're likely to blur the picture when you take it. So it gives you that warning. I'm going to shut that off just because I don't like to hear that noise. If we look at the lens itself, let's take that off. And you can see the aperture blades work well, and they're nice and quick and snappy. I don't see any oil on them, they look good. Focus is nice and smooth. The aperture ring has nice clicks. It also features a locking setting at f/22. Some cameras, I believe the program mode of the X700 made use of that. This one, I do not see any reason why you'd ever want to lock that on this one. If we look in here, we can see everything looks good inside. The aperture follower ring is nice and sprung over, so it will follow the ring on the lens. And you can see that the stop-down preview button is working. I should have tested the self-timer. We do that by pulling up on this little lever here and run it. Now we see the blinking light. It will soon start to blink faster, then it will be a steady light, and then shortly after it goes off. So there, we saw that working. So now we can shut this off and just look at it cosmetically. The bottom has still has this plastic protective piece on here. Lots of people peeled that off, but this one still has it. It just protects it from scuffing. The back looks nice. I see a little bit of a bulge right here and right here. These cameras, I believe, had some screws underneath the leatherette, and they start working loose a little bit over time. I would not bother with those right now. At some point, if you wanted to peel this up, you could and tighten those, but then you'd have to get this stuck back down and make it look nice. I wouldn't worry about that for quite a while yet. The rewind crank is in good condition. We pull up on the rewind crank and we can see inside. And let's turn it back on again. Advance. We can see the film advance was working. And oh, I still had the self-timer on. That's why that wasn't working. Okay, we'll turn it back on. Okay. See the film advance. As far as light seals, let's look here. This foam over here, that feels pretty good. And as I look along the door edges, they feel pretty dry and nice. Maybe just a little bit of dried residue there. I wouldn't worry about the light seals on this one. I think that looks really good. Let's see, the back closes properly. And we can shut that off. So all in all, a pretty good example of the Minolta X570. I should also point a couple other features here. There's a little battery holder strung on the strap. There are no batteries in it, but you could put some in by working this so that it pops up. Well, anyway, behind this strap there's a pocket, and if you get the strap to pop up, you could insert batteries and carry an extra set with you. It has this little shutter blind here, and the reason you'd want to use that is if you put the camera on a tripod and you compose your shot, before you press the button, if you're using an automatic mode, you'd want to put that on so that stray light entering in the back here doesn't affect the metering of the camera, so you can then take your picture and make sure your exposure's right. It has a Minolta shoulder pad, still soft and pliable rubber. And we'll put the lens cap back on. And then I'm just going to pull these batteries back out and show how that works. Just put a coin in the little coin slot right there. And back that out. And then you just have a couple of little button cells that fit in this holder. The holder's nice and clean. The contact down inside the camera is nice and clean. And that just simply screws into place. There we go. We've got the threads engaged. And there. So, quite a nice example of the Minolta X570, a hidden gem in 35mm film SLRs that is a good camera to use today.